wrote it on tablets, although we don't have that part of the story yet. The tablets are mentioned later in the narrative. When you study the Ten Commandments outside of like a local church setting, you will rarely hear the term Ten Commandments. That term, that English term, does not show up in the Hebrew. Rather, what the term the Bible uses is 10 words. So I'll give you one example, and there's two others. The only place you'll find that phrase, 10 Commandments, in our English translations, Exodus 34, Deuteronomy 4, and Deuteronomy 10. Now that word commandments is not the word commandment. It is the word word. You could translate it statements, I think would probably be a more accurate translation. But we have the term Ten Commandments. It works fine for us, and that really is what they are. But so because of this, because it's called the 10 words in the Hebrew, the Greek took those two words, put them together, and we have a Greek word that we call it today. The Ten Commandments are better called the Decalogue. And I don't know if you're familiar with that term or not. If you hear me say it, it really is out of habit. You read enough, in particular academic literature, you're going to come across Decalogue all the time. It's everywhere. It's the more formal term for the Ten Commandments. And so, being that it says God spoke these words, it gave me a little door there. Now, what I want to do is, because it says 10 words, I thought it would be helpful. What if we summarized all 10 commandments into a single word, each commandment into a single word? And I have a list, I think, of all but one. I've got to figure that one out. And they are subject to change. This is new. I thought of this yesterday, so I may not have given it enough thought. What would be the one-word summary of this first commandment? I believe it should be love. If you get that idea biblically, you'll understand what this commandment teaches. Remember, the law is a teacher. Paul makes that clear in Galatians. But so the words, the Decalogue, 10 words. But what about the prologue? What do we have here? Well, you'll notice here that the prologue traces the genesis of the Decalogue to God Himself. God spoke all these words. Now, this is important because at this point we are not reading the law of Moses, though we call it that. We are really reading the law of God. Moses is not its originator. God is. Thus, the authority of God's law is not to be questioned. Disobedience, then, is not a matter of a defense of justice or resistance to the system. But rather, it is rebellion against God. So these commandments are more than just a civic law code for the ancient Hebrews. They trace their genesis to God. In fact, you'll notice the language is God spoke. Now, we know the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, as God wrote. He wrote on tablets. So there's really two passages in the Bible where you get the handwriting of God. It's the Ten Commandments, and it is the handwriting of Jesus in John 8. And so this is a significant part. But before we get the stones, Moses wants to emphasize that these are God's spoken word. Now, that seems like a minor detail, but it's not. Because in the Bible, God doesn't just speak. He does do that. His words are often associated with creation. After all, when God created, He said, "Let there be light. Let the firmament be split. Let land come out of the waters," and so on and so forth. And so this is an act of creation. So the origin of the laws are Yahweh Himself. Now, since the law comes from God, they reflect divine character. Now, this is not unique to us as Judeo-Christian American Baptists, if you will. I don't know what term you want to use. America was founded on this idea, right? So if you read the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, all that sort of stuff, you'll find phrases like, "These truths are self-evident." Now understand, when your boy Tom Jeff wrote that, had he been in France and he wrote that, they would have laughed at him. These truths aren't self-evident. We're debating these truths. But given the influence of the First Great Awakening and the particularly predominantly Protestant Christianity that just dominated America of the mid to late 18th century, to Jefferson, who was more of a deist than a theist, he understood that there are certain truths that are self-evident. They do not need to be defended. They can either be accepted or you can be a fool. They are self-evident. And what are those? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. By the way, that phrase was originally life, liberty, and property. But because of the scourge of slavery, he was uncomfortable with that language of property. Jefferson took that from John Locke, who predates him, the English philosopher, all that sort of stuff. Anyways, this is the way we speak. So when it comes to human rights, we are careful, particularly as Americans, we are careful to say that human rights don't come from governments. Because if government gives you rights, it'll take them away. Rights fundamentally come from God, which means government can acknowledge and therefore promote and protect rights, or government can be at war against the will of God and God and nature's God. Right? It's the language of declaration. So this is very much fitting in the world we understand. Why? Because, well, we've read the Bible. This is the language that you're going to get here. So God spoke these words. What did he say? Well, he said, I am the Lord your God. I am Yahweh your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. I just want to highlight this. When God spoke to Abraham, he says, I am Yahweh your God who brought you out of the land of Ur. So now, so originally it was, I am the God that brought you from Ur into a promised land. Now it's, I am the God that brought you out of slavery into the promised land. So if you're looking at a map, Ur is to the east of Israel. Egypt is to the west, generically. So originally, I brought you from the east to the west. Remember the story of Genesis? Now you bring it from the west to the east. I am Yahweh your God. Now, I want you to notice here, this is the language of intimacy. This is not, I'm the guy in charge here, do what I tell you. It is rather, I am Yahweh and I am your God. It's language of intimacy. I am yours. I am with you. I'm the God that has delivered you from slavery. So notice here then that what follows works in the context of relationship. It does work in the context of government. You and I obey laws all day long because we don't want to get in trouble. It ain't worth the trouble. You know? So maybe you only went 5 over the speed limit to get here because you're pretty sure you won't get pulled over, but you won't go over that because you don't want to get pulled over, whatever it is. This is not that relationship. Think about it. A intimate relationship requires boundaries. Every single one of them requires boundaries. My wife and I have boundaries for each other. In this church, we have boundaries for each other. At work, you have boundaries for each other. You cannot have a healthy relationship without boundaries. When we get married, we say one of those boundaries is it's only us. We will not add to this relationship. We will not take away from this relationship. It is you and me till the day we die. So those are boundaries. This is what God is saying is, I am Yahweh your God. Therefore, he is entering into a covenant relationship. That's what chapter 19 is all about. He's entering into a covenant relationship that does require boundaries. And in those boundaries is the real area of freedom. And the first boundary is exclusivity. That we are to be together and no one else is to be in this relationship. You'll see there that I brought you out of the land of Egypt. So notice here, this is not God saying, look, if you obey me, I will love you. It is rather saying, look how I have loved you. Do you not want to be in this relationship that comes with boundaries? So, and that is important theologically because redemption precedes obedience. Religion tells you obedience precedes redemption. That is to say that I have to be a good person for God to love me. The story of the Exodus is God loves Israel, therefore they will obey him. Again, marriage works this way. I love my wife with all that I have. Therefore, there are certain things I ain't going to do. She says she loves me, probably because it's too much work to start over. Therefore, there are certain things she is not going to do. Likewise, there are certain things we are both going to do out of that love. Redemption leads to obedience, leads to relationship. So with that, one other thing is, if you read if you read the Ten Commandments from a Jewish perspective, even to this day, there's a rabbi at the Capitol. He's a really fascinating guy, really good guy. I've enjoyed getting to know him. He will tell you, and the Jews will tell you, that verse 2 is actually the first commandment. In fact, there's a Bible scholar I follow a little bit. Their treatment of the Decalogue is really good. They make the same argument, and they lay out why, and I'm not interested in that. I'm going to go with the traditional Christian Protestant approach. So what they'll do is say that the first commandment is, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. The second commandment is no idols, no graven images. That's a single command. We traditionally say, no, the first commandment is verse 3. And that's what we're going to go with, because we're right? No. All right, with that said, let's look at what does this command prohibit. Two things it prohibits. The first thing it prohibits is